Cabinet agreed to the development of an agro-processing industrial park on land situated at Phoenix Park. Now, the area is 133 acres, but the park would at first be in phase one just 33 acres. Now, this decision is part of the developmental trust in terms of diversifying the economy. All the existing parks developed by ETEC have been filled with the exception of the one at the Tamana Intech Park. So this agro-procession park at Phoenix Park will be added to it, and it will involve the activities of processing of raw materials, intermediate products, forestry and fisheries. It will also include the manufacture of food products and con- the conversion of contracted fresh produce into semi-processed raw material. Cabinet also agreed to the establishment of a standing committee for the strategic and sustainable development of tourism in Trinidad. This committee is to be chaired by Dr. Akula Cameron, the head of the Department of Tourism Management Studies at the University of the West Indies. The terms of reference of this committee includes providing high-level technical support and advice for the development of the tourism industry in Trinidad, to foster linkages between Trinidad and Tobago as it relates to tourism development, to review short and medium-term strategies, and to ensure that these strategies are aligned with the government policy framework and approved work program of the Ministry of Tourism. I also just wanted to update you on the establishment of a committee to conduct a review and assessment of the operations of all existing wholly owned state enterprises. That committee has two new members in Mr. Anton Prescott SC and Mr. Trevor Nicholas Gomez. So what we have done is appointed a lawyer and an accounting professional to the committee. The committee has refined its terms of reference to, among other things, conduct a review and assessment into the governance, operations, and performance of all wholly owned state enterprises, as well as TSTT, to examine and assess the relevance of these state enterprises, to assess duplications in service offerings by the state enterprises, and to recommend, where applicable, the most appropriate disposition for state enterprises and entities which are not performing in respect of their defined public purpose objectives. With that, I will now hand you over to Mrs. Batiste Primus to make an announcement.
When I was appointed the Minister of Labor, Small and Enterprise Development, I met with most of the stakeholders, which included the trade union movement, the credit union movement, members of the various chambers and the energy chamber, the chamber of commerce, and there was agreement for holding various stakeholders consultation. I am pleased to share with you the fact that yesterday, a two-day stakeholders consultation with the Cooperative Credit Union Movement on two pieces of legislation, actually two controversial pieces of legislation, the Cooperative Societies Amendment Bill of 2014 and the Credit Union Bill of 2014. Members of the media may recall that the Cooperative Societies Amendment Bill and the Credit Union Bill of 2014 sought to treat the credit union as a banking institution And of course, there were a lot of protests against that attempt. Yesterday and today at NEC in Couva, almost 300 representatives from the credit union movement have been meeting. We close off that consultation this afternoon, and it is hoped that at the end of the 2 days that a framework for moving forward would be arrived at. There are salient points in both pieces of legislation that can prove to be useful. And of course, those who are involved in the consultation would come up with a framework and a justification that would inform the kind of amendments that the ministry would have to make to those pieces of legislation. The second stakeholder consultation is with the labor movement and the employers and chambers on the recommendations of the Industrial Relations Advisory Committee, and also that famous or infamous amendment to the Industrial Relations Bill 2015, which amazingly brought unity between the trade union movement and the employers. They were speaking literally from the same hymn book. They both rejected that piece of legislation since there was not enough consultation on it. As a consequence, therefore, on Monday, the 22nd of February, and Tuesday, the 23rd of February, we will be engaging in a 2-day stakeholder consultation with JTAM, NATOC, FITON, the employers, and the chambers. That forum will be held similar to the forum that ends today at the National Energy Skills Center in Couva, which is really nice, a really nice environment. It's very large. It can hold up to 400. The third stakeholder consultation would occur on Wednesday, the 30th of March, and that is a workshop on contract labor, reducing our dependency. Members of the media may recall that the political party from which I come from engaged in a memorandum of understanding with the Joint Trade Union Movement, which resulted in agreement that should we get into power, we will address the issue of contract labor in this country. The government can address contract labor in the context of the public service, and we would also use the national mechanism to influence other employers in the country to also reduce their dependence on contract labor. That is also going to be a very, very important forum, and I look forward to receiving all the views on this issue. I might add that there is a cabinet-appointed committee to look at the issue of contract labor. So the workshop would really assist that committee in the completion of its work. The whole principle of contract labor in this country has really gotten a bit out of control. The principle of contract labor is having a clearly defined job to be done and giving someone a contract to do that job, and when the job comes to an end, the person goes his or her own way. But that has not been the case. Contract labor has formed a literal workforce, a parallel workforce to permanent workers. And if an organization, the nature of an organization requires a particular function to be done on a continuously nature, then there is no need for a contract to be given. That person should be a permanently appointed person within that particular organization. So this government intends to keep faith with the assurances given, and at the end of March, we will have some skeletal framework in which to move forward firstly in the public service and the state sectors, and using moral suasion to influence other employers to reduce their dependence on contract labor.
Mr. Stuart Young.
My purpose this afternoon is as a follow-up to the conversation I began with you previously about two cases that were taking place in the United States that have now been concluded with respect to the export from Trinidad and Tobago of melamine and the import into the United States of melamine products. You would recall when we had first become aware as a cabinet of these cases taking place at the Department of Commerce and the International Trade Commission in Washington, D.C. with respect to MHTL and the government of Trinidad and Tobago and allegations of countervailing and anti-dumping. We were very, very conscious at that stage of the potential detrimental effects on Trinidad and Tobago, and in particular the primary findings by these two bodies that seemed to be very out of whack at that stage. Well, I'm happy to report that on the 2nd of November, the Department of Commerce made its final determination with respect to the countervailing subsidy rate and found at 6.79% as opposed to a rate of 27.48%, which was their preliminary finding. So that is a significant reduction as their final finding. And then on the 2nd of December 2015, the International Trade Commission that was investigating the anti-dumping allegations found that there was no case made out of anti-dumping against Trinidad and Tobago and MHTL. And what this means now is that they combine the two, because the fact that they found that there was no anti-dumping imposes and reacts as well on the countervailing. So there are now going to be no anti-dumping or countervailing duties imposed against either MHTL or Trinidad and Tobago with respect to these melamine exports from Trinidad and Tobago into the United States. So we're quite pleased with that, and as a cabinet, we were appraised of it this morning, and we will be monitoring these things going forward.